We are in the ordinary times liturgically now. The second Sunday, there are actually 34 weeks of ordinary time. They'll be interrupted in early March with the Sundays of Lent and then Easter. And sometime in June we'll be back to ordinary time. So that's how it goes. And so it's a change from holiday liturgies. Last Sunday we had celebration of the baptism of Jesus and the beginning of his public life. We stopped to have a time of change in the readings today, the first and the third reading. It'd be very important to read slowly, I think, and prayerfully, the little poem from Isaiah. And it's a poem about God's attitude or God's relationship or God's being for us. And whatever you think of yourself, this is what I think of you. And so he says, I'm no longer, can you call yourself this? I will call you that. No longer will you be disgraced? I will call you espoused. I will call you my beloved. My delight is in you. So that's a real prophetic announcement of God's changing Israel's attitude towards itself as it returns from exile. So no longer look at yourself in disgrace, but within the context of grace, if you want to say that. The gospel is a very important gospel in John's account of Jesus' life. John's gospel is about 40 to 60 years after Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And as we know, each gospel was written for a very specific community. And John's gospel is written for the little group of Jewish people who see Jesus as the Christ. And the whole gospel is, and the first one, this one we hear today, is kind of a prologue of all the responses of the apostles as they slowly believe that Jesus is the Christ. Remember, they're very faithful Jews, and they are faithful to the promise that the Messiah will come. Okay, is this he? And this happens, and they say, well, we're starting to believe. And, oh yeah, we see signs. And this gospel, as it says, is the first sign, the first gesture, the first display. In a way, it's another epiphany of the adult Jesus and the adult followers of Jesus. But they're fragile in faith. So they need to see signs. They need the encouragement. So this first of the miracles, of the signs, there's not many miracles in John's gospel, but they're all for the encouragement of the little fragile community of Jewish followers of Jesus as the Messiah. They're still Jewish people, reverencing their tradition, and so does Jesus. So let's look at the change. So we talked about change in Isaiah. There's this wedding feast. This gospel is not about weddings or marriages or anything like that, except if you take the marriage of God to humanity in Jesus. But that's a little much. So we have, to understand John's gospel, you really have to understand the first couple chapters of Genesis. Both Genesis, the first book in the Pentateuch, and John's gospel, they both begin with "in the beginning." So there's a creation theme in John's Gospel. And the first one we see is the creation, as we saw in Genesis, creating order out of chaos. Remember that then. That Genesis is, there's nothing, the chaos of nothing. And so first the sun, then creation to be seen by the sun. Creation is meant to be seen. So Jesus is the new light. And that's in the prologue. The first 19 verses of John's Gospel is a bit of a prelude, an overture of what's coming. And Jesus is light. Jesus is meant to be seen so that others can see themselves differently because of that light. That's really important. Let me say that again. That Jesus as light shines so that he be seen like the sun, but that other things will be seen because of the sun. That people and things will change because of the light of Jesus. That's central to John's Gospel. So here we have a social chaos. A wedding feast, lots of people, celebration, all the wine is gone. But we have some water. Water is a symbol of chaos. Yeah, water is a symbol of chaos. And Jesus is the word that's changing chaos into life, water into wine. Wine being the symbol of life and joy and happiness. So there's 6 jars of water. 6 days of creation. That just happened? No, it's all literature, you see. And so symbols are very much in John's Gospel. Light, bread, word, gestures. So he takes the 6 jars of creation, of water, of chaos, and makes them wine. You say, well, that's wonderful. He solved a social chaotic situation. And there's a great celebration because the head waiter says, most people save the worst wine for later after everybody is kind of happy with whatever is. But you have saved the best for last. So that, and this is very important. Everything I say is important, of course, but this is really important. That Jesus takes the old creation and changes it. That the better wine is in Jesus. That's John's Gospel. That if you want to say creation in Genesis, that was a really good creation. Jesus is even a better. That's what John is saying in that Gospel. That you have saved the second creation, as we said a couple of weeks ago, that the light is for the whole of creation, that Jesus is not just for the Jews, continuation of God's relationship with the Jews, but now for all of us. So that Jesus as the new creation is for all of us, is for real joyful living. So that's really what the gospel is about. Jesus as the changer from what we might think of ourselves, like in Isaiah, I'm changing your name. I'm changing your image of yourself. I would like to change the chaotic sense of yourself into an orderly, a creational sense of yourself. Now, you can use Jesus and you can use Scripture to solve problems. Or just say, oh, I'll turn it over to Jesus. Every time I turn something over to Jesus, he hands it right back to me and says, good, I'll live with you, but you have to deal with it. So Jesus isn't a problem solver. Now you say, well, but didn't he solve their social problem? Yes, for a purpose. So that the transformation, not of, I don't go to Jesus with my problems and let him solve them. Though I can read scripture and say, oh yeah, that's a good solution. But he wants us to live the lives that he has given us with a new image of ourselves, to change that image from chaos to order. That's a big theme in John's Gospel. And if you go through John's Gospel, you see chaos, a man that is paralyzed and can't get to the healing waters, a woman that's got marital problems, a crowd that has no bread to eat, the two sisters whose brother Lazarus is dead. There's chaos. And Jesus brings order. And that's the prayer of this liturgy, to let Jesus not solve our problems. Our problems are ours. That's the chaos. What is solved is the peacefulness that because I have a problem, I am not chaotic. My problem might be that I look at myself as chaotic. Then he asks us to let him convince us that we are not chaos. We are not just water. We are the wine of life. We are meant to be part of his light, to help people know who they are. And that's a great Eucharistic mission. As Jesus went around raising people from their chaotic to their harmonious or orderly way, that would be a great mission for us, to extend his light and help people change their image of themselves. No longer do I look at you this way. No longer do I want you to look at yourself that way. Listen to what the prophet says. I no longer call you forsaken, but I espouse you. You are the sought for. You're not just the lost. You don't have to find me. I will be finding you. But then through you, I will ask you to bring order out of chaos within you and then around you. So this is not about marriage exactly, though married people are asked to form each other, create each other, change chaos into order. But that's the mission of us all. And we come, and right at the end of the gospel today, the apostles started to believe that he was the Christ. That's the summation of all the movements of Jesus, to attract him with signs, to attract others with signs, that they might follow him as apostles of bringing order out of chaos, of shining the light of his love into where there is the chaos of darkness. So it's a long series of creation narratives. One final word. Jesus is the intensification, okay? God's insistence. God is sending his intensification of his creative love. That Jesus is the intensification of what was begun in Genesis. Let there be light. Let there be Jesus. Let there be me as part of the creative light that is Jesus and is the Jesus we hear and receive in the Eucharist.